store.
Here's a snapshot of someone's visual representation of what the solar system is doing according to the science. I think it's pretty wild when you just stop and look at this and think about it, because we're just flying through space. We're just a big rock moving around with other big objects. I do find it interesting that we're taught all of this as fact, except there are a lot of great unknowns. And all we have are primarily CGI videos and composite images to look at and review. And if you aren't picking up what I'm putting down, then let me be really blunt here. I don't believe this visual representation is accurate. I believe something else could be true. And it's all based on the foundation that we never went to the moon. It's all based on the belief that we have not explored outer space. Because I do not think outer space exists as we've been taught. As a result, I believe something else when it comes to Earth, this place that we live on. And now it's time for me to share what I believe. It's something that may compel you to give me a hat made out of tinfoil. This may also compel you to laugh at me again, maybe even more than when I shared my belief that we've never been to the moon. My statement may compel you to shut off this video right now, but please, I am asking you to just keep watching until the end of it. And yes, I recognize that this is going to sound very out there when you hear me say it. You're going to ask a lot of questions immediately. You're going to wonder what my claim would look like if it was true or even possible. But if you know me, you know that I am an over-researcher. You know that I'm the kind of guy who needs to understand how all of the pieces fit. So please, just know that I will begin to help make sense of it all and share lots of information immediately after I make my statement, or better yet, after I pose my question. Okay, here is my question. What if the Earth was flat?
Did you know that starting at the end of 2015 through 2017, Flat Earth was one of the top search terms in the USA, let alone the world? Even Google mentioned it during their commercial. Do you remember this? Why would Google be promoting this?
As a joke?
As a joke? No. We know why. They were panicking. Panicking because the platform they purchased 10 years ago was collapsing with truth. The powers that be would not allow that.
As we want to provide users with authoritative, trustworthy information.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I only have a minute and a half, and I don't really need to hear what you're trying to provide. I want to know how you're dealing with all these conspiracy theorists on your platform.
So the first way is by demoting low-quality content and promoting more authoritative content, and the second is by providing more transparency for users. So we're introducing boxes that provide factual information at the top of results that have shown themselves to turn up a lot of information that is counterfactual, such as searching for the Earth is flat on YouTube, where you see a lot of...
Your response is to put a box saying, nope, the Earth is not flat.
Correct.
Okay.
So instead of deleting all of the millions of videos we have made, they want you to search for it, because they already changed their algorithm to be set up in their favor.
What is this trash?
None of this tells you our side of the story. These are all videos they put together, so you can watch and learn nothing. Nothing that any of us would show you.
Warning, do not watch this video unless you want to become a flat earther. You say yeah right, but I guarantee you that you don't actually know what we believe. And if you let yourself watch to the end with an open mind, you'll find out that it's actually you that's been hanging on a belief system, on a religion as it relates to the globe. You'll also develop a newfound respect for this group of people who are so willing to be called stupid, so willing to be looked at as idiots for simply questioning the narrative of what they're being told, which I guarantee you is harder than passively absorbing a lie. We probably actually know more about what you believe than you do. Remember, we used to be you. So trust me when I say that any objection that is currently or is about to arise in your mind, we've already dealt with ourselves. And if this thing was truly easily debunkable, none of us would still be flat earthers. Have you not wondered why someone would believe in something so stupid as flat earth? Why people don't mind being called idiots? Maybe it's because it's not that stupid. Maybe someone wants you to think it's stupid. We are simply people in search of truth who hold empirical, measurable, repeatable science as well as ancient accounts on a higher level than mere theoretical mathematics. And last thing before I get going, I want you to know that they are banking on you not questioning this. They're hoping to their God with a lowercase g that you do not look into this, because they know if you do, you're going to have some major questions that unfortunately have no warm and fuzzy answers, which is why they've worked so hard to keep the flat earth, the perception of flat earth, as a theory that only morons could believe in. So sit back, relax, and I promise you will not regret it.
Just our common sense everyday perception of the Earth, it is flat as far as we can tell. It is motionless as far as we can tell. And everything in the sky is revolving around us as far as we can tell. If nobody told us otherwise, we'd logically assume that the Earth was flat, motionless, with everything in the sky revolving around us.
Is the Earth flat or round? It's round. Okay, now let's see. How do we go about proving that?
That's a hard thing for me to even start talking about because there are so many proofs that the Earth is round, it's difficult to know where to start.
So tell me, Neil, is the Earth flat?
We have video from space of the rotating spherical Earth. The Earth is round.
So there it is. The Earth from outer space. Do you believe this is a real, live recording?
Do you believe?
How about now? Does this make it more believable? Ask yourself.
Is this real? Do you believe?
There are proofs all around you. It is not difficult to know that the Earth is round.
Look at pictures from space where you see the Earth as a sphere.
What I'm now going to do is look at the very first and original blue marble that was taken during Apollo 17 that has been on more history books and science books than any picture on Earth. And I can remember staring at this thing in awe as a young child and going, wow, the scientists were right, our ancestors were dumb, it's round, just look at it. But one day I saw this meme that said, on this cartoon world, it is dark in Tokyo, Moscow, London, New York, Los Angeles, Honolulu, and Sydney simultaneously. And I thought, this has to be a ridiculous joke. There's no way that this is reality. Let me look up how I can debunk this really quick and pull up a daylight map of Earth and compare. Because we know where it's daylight. We can call the people and say, hey, is the sun up over there? Yes, it is. So I put this globe on a daylight map of Earth and realized that that meme was more correct than my science textbooks, and that it reveals entire continents that would be in darkness that should be in light. Then you look up and see North America, a third of it should be in daylight. So many places should have daylight that would be in darkness. And you can do this with pretty much any picture of Earth, but this is one that was said to be real.
And it's not okay to think that the Earth is flat. This is not a viable argument. I have friends who have been on the International Space Station. They have orbited the Earth once every 90 minutes. You know, I have had personal experience with people that have been up in space and can see with their own eyes that the Earth is round. And of course, we've taken all these amazing pictures from space. They're so beautiful, all those pictures of the Earth.
It's all fraud, it's all fake. Pretty much everything NASA puts out is fraudulent. There are no images of Earth from space. Looking at these images of Earth, including the one they called the Big Blue Marble, which was released in 2002, I think. Zoom into it with Photoshop, you'll see where they've used the clone tool in Photoshop to take a picture of one of the clouds and stamp it in various places around the picture. They got lazy.
Last month, for the first time since 1972, NASA released a blue marble, a single snapshot of the Earth taken from outer space. And so much has changed in the decades between that first picture and the second. Borders have shifted, generations have come and gone. Our global population has nearly doubled. But one thing hasn't changed. Our planet is as beautiful as ever. It still looks blue.
Here's the 2002 blue marble image created by Robert Simon from NASA. It looks real, right? But it's not real, and NASA says so. I can't say this with enough emphasis. This is an admitted fake. A NASA employee wrapped a flat map of the Earth. Let me repeat that. He wrapped a flat map, not photographs. He wrapped a flat map of the Earth around a cartoon ball and added surfaces, clouds, and oceans to match what people think the Earth looks like.
In 2002, Blue Marble 2.0, NASA's Rob Simon made this. And it had wide appeal too. For example, it ended up as the default background on the iPhone.
I didn't even know until I bought an iPhone and turned it on and kind of did a little happy dance.
Simon's job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is, a composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
To us, the really cool thing was the data set. Up until that point, there was no realistic color map of the globe anywhere.
So the land layer here comes from
the Moderate Resolution Imaging Spectroradiometer aboard Terra.
And the tricky part here was the weather.
So we actually had to take clouds out.
They stashed the clouds for later, went onto the ocean. That came from an instrument that measures phytoplankton in the sea.
Where it was low, I colored it dark blue because they're low mostly in mid-oceans. And then where it's a little bit higher, it was like a little bit brighter green.
Then add the clouds back in.
There's a small problem with it because there's a very slight gap in between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then
there was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it.
I'm Dr. Stuart Clark. I'm an astronomer, and I'm the author of The Unknown Universe. It's so clearly obvious that the world isn't flat, and the pictures from space show our world as a globe. And yet somehow, there are some people that still seem to believe that the Earth is flat.
So, maybe 1 billion people have seen this blue marble image of Earth, believing it's real, when it is composed of a flat map wrapped around a ball with other fakery added. Isn't that disconcerting for the honest, objective truth seeker? After the admitted 2002 blue marble fakery, NASA claims that they took an actual photograph of the Earth from space in July 2015. That's the first alleged photograph in 43 years. Here it is. Does this alleged 2015 photograph look much different than the admitted fake image of 2002? As we already saw, NASA artists can admittedly create fake images of the Earth that look real to everyone, and that's a fact. Shouldn't you now be a bit skeptical? Instead of spending $340 million on this alleged 2015 photograph, NASA could have just had another NASA employee recreate the 2002 image with a few different clouds and shading, and no one would know the difference, and NASA could pocket the rest. But let's take a closer look at NASA's supposed 2015 photograph. Let's rotate it and zoom in. The word sex is spelled in the clouds. It's unmistakable. Some pervert at NASA thought that was awesome. This isn't cherry-picking one of 10,000 images. This is the first supposed photograph of Earth from space in 43 years, and it just so happens to have sex spelled in the clouds. Come on.
Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Danley. I'm an astronomer. I worked for the NASA Hubble Space Telescope project for 10 years, and for the last 14 years, I've been the curator of Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, California. I don't actually know anyone who actually believes in the flat Earth theory, but I've seen statistics that say that some substantial fraction, like 20%, 30%, I've even seen something as high as 50%, which I just have to not believe because it's too depressing. But once you take a look at it, you come to see that it just doesn't hold up.
The next fallback for the globe supporter will be the Himawari satellite. You know, the satellite the globe supporters always boast is producing thousands of images of the Earth from space. I have to say this again. NASA already stated that it can wrap flat maps around a ball and make it look real. Himawari is just a step up in the software, as now weather radar on top of flat maps is just wrapped around a ball with an added night and day terminator line. Paul on the Plane has a great video exposing the fact that Himawari is just that, software that wraps flat weather radar maps onto a ball. That's it. The total lack of so-called pictures of Earth from space only proves that the globe and space are nothing but propaganda.
But we accept the globe Earth model, the planets, the stars, the solar system, and outer space in general because we're taught it as truth from childhood to adulthood. It's reinforced over and over again. Eventually, that leads to people just being indoctrinated into the deception from birth.
Earth, 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 yep, 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 Earth, Earth, yep, 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 yep.
Since you were a kid, you've seen this image, but you've never seen it from that point of view. But your brain has three-dimensionalized, oh yeah, that's the Earth. How? Through repetition.
The single most effective method of brainwashing is simple repetition. A steady, constant exposure to the same idea over and over again until the mind accepts it as truth. Very much related to this is the use of symbols, for the power of a symbol is that it can in itself contain rather complex ideas, an entire belief system even, boiled down to a solitary, recognizable visual cue. Every time that visual cue is seen, it subtly reinforces whatever inherent concepts have been ascribed to it in the mind of the viewer. In the case of the symbol of the globe, when we see this icon, we see so much more than just a sphere. For embedded alongside the construct of the globe Earth is the correlating universe in which it is said to be moving, orbiting, spinning. We assume that the symbol of the globe could only be so thoroughly ubiquitous and universally accepted because it is what we all know to be the truth. We never stop for a moment to consider the possibility that perhaps the complete inverse might actually be the case. We all think we know it to be true because it is simply so universally accepted and constantly reinforced.
And that leads to people getting programmed into accepting the opposite of what they actually observe and experience.
The horizon, for instance, is always completely flat, and you don't feel any motion. So if you were just born today and looked out, you wouldn't assume that you're standing on a spinning ball. You'd assume that you are on a flat, motionless plane. So to assume that we are on a spinning ball is actually contrary to our common sense and our everyday experience. And there's also experiments that have been done to test whether we're on a spinning ball or not.
Go to the seashore. Go to a seashore and figure out why you can't, if you live on the East Coast, figure out why you can't see Spain from the East Coast of North America. Just go to the middle of the Mississippi River and look south. Why can't you see the Louisiana? Why can't you see New Orleans? What's the problem there?
If it's a flat Earth, why couldn't you stand on the coast of California with a telescope and see Japan or Hawaii or something? And I think you know the answer to that. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. You can't see an unlimited distance. The lowest layer is the densest and not transparent. So if you imagine like a hot, humid day, the haze over a road, all telescopes will eventually blur out in that same kind of way due to the air. So no, you can't see an infinite distance.
As I mentioned earlier, it wasn't the words flat Earth or the fact that the flat Earth theory has all the answers, because it doesn't, and it certainly wasn't the social consequences that drew us in. But for most of us, it was the questioning of the globe model, which ultimately brought us to flat Earth.
It should be obvious, if you pay attention and think about it. If you send a ship straight to the horizon, eventually it begins to disappear until it's no longer visible beyond your horizon.
Right.
And you should ask yourself, what kind of surface would produce that result?
So let's get started with some footage taken by Red Pill Philosophy, a globe skeptic, where he was looking for a lighthouse that was about 13 miles away and trying to see if there was any curvature between him and this lighthouse. And what do you know? On his first try, he found the curvature of Earth. He should have stopped there like everyone else on TV and said, yep, it is round. You cannot hide that much of a giant lighthouse and the shoreline of a nearby peninsula unless the Earth is round, people.
We see when ships leave the harbour, you can see as they gradually disappear below the horizon.
And he should have stopped, but he didn't. He went back to that same location again when the atmospheric conditions were different. And he tried to zoom in and see if he could find the lighthouse, and he started to realize that there was some land that was visible that he couldn't see the first time. And he panned around, searching for the curvature that he once saw, wondering if it would still be there now that he's seeing some land. And what do you know? There it is. Not just the entire lighthouse, but the land beneath it. The dry land that we now know of as Earth. Because the curvature, although it can be seen, it also vanishes. Everything has a vanishing point. A little bit further, these things would vanish into the atmosphere, even if they would be visible without refraction. You can go back, make these repeated observations, or just watch time-lapse photography, and you will see the curve rise as the mountains in the background drop behind the curve.
Watch. As ships sail away, they don't disappear all at once. No, first, the bottom will disappear. See, the bottom of the ship is gone. Now we can see midway up, and then the whole thing disappears.
As it goes farther and farther away, you see less and less of the bottom of it and more of the top of that. You can see that with binoculars, by an ocean, by a lake. It's really easy. That wouldn't happen if the Earth were flat. You would simply see the boat getting smaller and smaller and smaller as it went farther away, but you'd be able to see the whole thing with the same proportions.
If ships sail over the curve of the Earth, why are we able to bring them back into view with high-powered lenses as if they merely sailed past the horizon of the eye's angular resolution?
Boats don't disappear over the curvature of the horizon. Boats disappear due to perspective. All you have to do is go to the beach, watch a boat disappear from your eye, and then whip out your telescope, your binoculars, or your high-powered zoom on your camera, and you can pull the entire boat right back into view, whole mass and all. Imagine that. You can debunk the curvature of the Earth yourself with just a simple zoom on your camera. Bye-bye, little boat.
BS about the Earth being flat is getting out of control. Can you please help us?
All right, hold my sandwich.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Sorry.
Here, you take that. Here. You want? Oh my God. Okay.
The Earth looks flat because, one, you're not far enough away at your size. Two, your size isn't large enough relative to Earth to notice any curvature at all.
So where can you see the curvature of the Earth? You should be able to detect the curvature of the Earth from an aeroplane at a cruising height of around 35,000 feet. But you'd need a fairly wide field of view, 60 degrees, and a virtually cloud-free horizon. So this is what you would see when rising in altitude. This video was actually recorded by people using balloons, and in some instances they were looking for the curvature of the Earth. As you can see, there's no curvature, except you can see because of the lens, sometimes it distorts the Earth and it makes it look like there's curvature.
The definition of a fisheye lens is an ultra-wide-angle lens that produces strong visual distortion to create a wide, panoramic, or hemispherical image.
Whenever you start to tilt it upwards or downwards, that's where you get the curvature distortion. So if you tilt the lens upwards in relationship to the horizon, it's going to kind of curve up and create a bowl type effect. If you tilt it downward, it's going to create a sphere or a kind of an orb.
And I gotta tell you that I was recently on a 14-hour flight where they used a fisheye lens to show the exterior to passengers through our television screens as we made our trip across the Earth. That fisheye lens made the outside surface look curved when we were in the air, except when we took off and landed, the same distorted curved proportions remained.
This whole thing, it's just a symptom of a larger problem. There's a growing anti-intellectual strain in this country. It may be the beginning of the end of our informed democracy. Of course, in a free society, you can and should think whatever you want. And if you want to think the world is flat, go right ahead. But if you think the world is flat and you have influence over others, then being wrong becomes being harmful to the health, the wealth, and the security of our citizenry.
What you're seeing right now is a video from 121,000 feet. I remember when I first saw this, I was just dumbfounded because it didn't match anything that I've watched before. Whenever you're shown a picture of a high-altitude balloon or even a high flight, you're shown something phony like this. This isn't once in a while, this is the standard. It turns out that these so-called curvature photos and videos were all shot with a fisheye or ultra-wide-angle lens to get this effect. That's a fact. The lens of the camera or the curvature of the window in the airplane is the supposed curvature. It's a curvature illusion. For all of our lives, we're inundated with supposed pictures from space. High-altitude balloons finally gave us a vision of what the Earth truly looks like from high up. Here's a great example of the standard deception. As you can see by the bent rope, the student's photo here was taken with a fisheye lens, and then the article falsely claimed it was the curvature. Do you see the deception?
Besides Hollywood movies and TV shows, these wide-angle camera lenses are the only reason you'll ever witness curvature. It's the very reason why most people believe they have seen curvature.
Discovery and exploration got us out of the caves, and each generation benefits from what previous generations have learned. Isaac Newton, my man, said, if I have seen farther than others, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. I get an amen.
We're not going back to the dark ages. We're actually figuring things out. Things that are changing people, not just mentally, but spiritually. People are realizing why they were put here in the first place, who they are, why everyone is lying to them about what they live on, and the significance of a lie that seems so innocent. Trust me, I thought that was the most innocent thing that anyone could ever lie about, but it's not. There is something sinister going on, and it's not conspiracy type of stuff. It's factual stuff that's been going on for centuries before you and I got here.
When you stand on the shoulders of those who came before, you might just see far enough to realize the Earth isn't flat. And by the way, this is called gravity.
Now let's keep moving along, because I want to talk about gravity. Because we're told that gravity is what makes much of this happen, right? And gravity must exist, and it must be true for the ball Earth to exist. So what do we know about gravity?
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
Wow.
No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know.
All right, so this is a balloon filled with half helium and half air. It's not going anywhere. It's not going up or down. It is just floating. So gravity, it holds people, buildings, and these miles and miles of oceans. All of it gets held to the Earth's surface because of gravity. But it can't actually pull down this balloon that's filled with half helium and half air.
So to say, what is it? I think Einstein, in an Einsteinian answer, we would say gravity is the curvature of space and time. And objects will follow the curvature of space-time, and we interpret that as a force of gravity. That's probably the best answer I can give to a what is gravity question.
Okay, are you confused yet? Apparently, I need to be an astrophysicist to understand or attempt to explain gravity.
I have a pet peeve about the word theorize. It makes it sound like, well, it's just a theory. Like I could be making up anything. Gravity is a theory. These are things that have been tested so many times, and it undercuts the seriousness and the meaning of all of the work that goes behind actually trying to understand something as basic as why do things fall when you drop them.
Long before the theory of gravity was a glimmer in Newton's imagination, the natural physics of density and buoyancy already perfectly explained why apples fall down. Objects fall or rise based on their relative density to the medium surrounding them. Apples fall because they are denser than the air, while helium balloons rise because they are lighter.
No gravity necessary.
This is why raindrops fall down through the air and air bubbles rise up through water. Everything seeks its relative density and rises or falls until settling accordingly. If Newton's apple had landed in a puddle, he would have seen the apple only fell through the air because it was denser than the air, but then floated on top of the water because it was less dense than water.
It's not okay to say that the Earth is flat. This is some sort of strange denial. I don't know where it comes from. And it's something where I keep getting this question. We really need to put this question to bed because we've known the Earth is a sphere for a long time.
Okay, so in the 1930s, we had both Auguste Piccard and the Russians sending up high-altitude balloons, and they're looking out and they're not able to detect curvature. So we go forward about a decade to the 1940s, 1948. This is an official CIA, look up here, CIA.gov, okay, CIA declassified document from the Russians. I'm going to pull it up here in Adobe Acrobat. It's a little easier because I've already highlighted some stuff here, same document. All right, so the subject is Earth measurements, 1948, Moscow, Russia. Outer gravitational field and shape of the physical surface of the Earth. They're trying to figure out the shape of the Earth? Wait a minute. I thought we knew the shape of the Earth since Pythagoras and Eratosthenes, right? Well, apparently the Russians didn't get the memo. We can regard the potential of the real Earth, by this equation here apparently, as known correct to an additive constant, whatever that is, at all points of the physical surface of the Earth and only on the surface, whereas it is not determinable at all other points of space without knowledge of the shape of the Earth. So they're still trying to figure out the shape of the Earth here. But since the shape of the Earth is not known, the shape of the Earth is not known, 1948. The true coordinates of these points, B, L, and H, are unknown to us. So the Russians are having trouble figuring out the shape of the Earth in 1948.
Listen, here's how we know the Earth is round, okay? If you look at the curvature of the... Wait a second. Why am I arguing with you? You're wrong. We don't have to waste our time trying to convince you. But if you want to waste your time trying to convince us, go ahead.
But what is the math behind the curvature? This is the math that somebody did right here. And you can see here that it's a spherical trigonometry of a sphere with 4,000 mile radius. And you can see here from the center point to the surface of the Earth, it's supposed to be roughly 4,000 miles because that's the radius. You can see the math here and how it's working. Okay, so you can see at 1 mile, it's not even close to a mile. It's less than a foot drop in the curvature. But then if you skip down to 10 miles, you're looking out 10 miles, based on where you're standing, it's going to be about 66 feet. It's still not a mile. But skip all the way down to 100 miles. It's about 1 1/4 miles is what the actual drop would be, the curve would be. And you're looking at over 6,000 feet at that point. And then if you were to actually go to 1,000 miles, let's say you were looking 1,000 miles out from where you're standing, it's going to be a 128-mile curve and drop to that point out there from where you're standing 1,000 miles. And you can see it goes further and further. At 2,000 miles, you're looking at over a 500-mile drop based on where you're looking.
What you're seeing right now is my first curvature test back in April 2016. I had been researching flat Earth since October 2015, but this was the first time I tested it with my Nikon P900. I chose a distance of 6 miles because I wanted to test whether Rowbotham was telling the truth. He was. In this test, my wife was carrying a mirror at the opposite end of a reservoir, reflecting the sunlight from 6.3 miles away. I watched my wife place the mirror into the water. However, under the globe model, and that's taking the observation height into consideration, my wife should have been entirely obstructed by the curvature with a target hidden height over 12 feet. 12 feet should have been hidden by the alleged curvature, but there is simply no curvature over that her reservoir. I also want to quickly address the globe refraction argument. This is a still from the video. Here it is cropped and zoomed in. Here is a picture of what it looks like on the opposite shore, and you can see the strange branch that projects horizontally. If 12 feet should have been hidden behind the curvature, then my footage from 6.3 miles should have looked something like this. But the globe liars out there will claim that this 12-foot section hopped the curvature and is a mirage. But here's the problem with that. If this 12-foot section inexplicably hopped the curvature, then why didn't the rest of the view get distorted? There would be a cascading distortion effect. As you can see, there is no distortion accounting for this curvature hopping.
We took a picture across the Great Lakes from Michigan and was able to see, I believe it's Chicago, which he shouldn't have been able to see. And the television station basically said it was a mirage.
I found this photo, Grandmere State Park. This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline. Very interesting here. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher in the sky.
They always say it's a mirage, but for a mirage to happen, you have to have very specific atmospheric conditions. It's not a mirage, it's simply that you're looking across a plane.
Here's another one. In this clip, the news lady again says that you're seeing a mirage. It's a photograph from Michigan to Milwaukee at a distance of 80 miles. The top of the tallest building in Milwaukee should be 3,102 feet below the horizon, according to the spherical model, but we can see much of the city line. Do you think that's line of sight or selective curvature hopping mirages that just happen to present a flat Earth? Can you allow yourself to see the problem here? I don't care if you believe me right now, but you as a rational thinking individual need to grab your telescope and your binoculars and head out to the lake or ocean on a calm, high visibility day without miraging, and you will see the flat Earth for yourself. We see too far.
Here's the longest bridge in the world, the Danyang Kongchon Grand Bridge in China, 102.4 miles long. There should exist nearly 7,000 feet of curvature drop in that bridge. 7,000 foot curvature drop. Do you see it? It ain't there. Look at the horizon. It's flat.
Here's something interesting that I found at NASA's website. It's a NASA reference publication from the late 1980s about the derivation and definition of a linear aircraft model. Let's go through this. There's a lot of math, but toward the end on page 30, the first sentence in the concluding remarks say, "This report derives and defines a set of linearized system matrices of a rigid aircraft of constant mass, flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth." I gotta ask, why would this exist if we're supposed to be on a spinning ball? So why would they need documentation talking anything about a stationary atmosphere and a flat, non-rotating Earth? I just don't get it. And of course, I understand that this does not prove anything by itself. There are just so many things out there that when combined, they create a convergence of strangeness that makes your head spin like the Earth is supposed to be spinning.
There's a place in Bolivia called Salar de Uyuni, which is a salt flat. It's literally 100 miles wide one way and 80 miles across, and it's perfectly flat. And when it rains, literally you get an inch of water, and it looks like a perfect mirror. Now, how does that happen on a sphere? Yeah, it shows you that, if you're one end of this salt flat, you can see perfectly clearly the other end 100 miles away. So it's just showing you that the Earth is flat, and without the effect of the waves in the sea, you'll be able to see a whole lot further.
This laser test was by D-Marble. In this case, the person holding the laser was at 7 feet, shooting the laser at a distance of 10 miles. At 10 miles under the globe model, the observer would have to be at a height of 30 feet in order to see the laser source. Instead, you can see the source of laser at just inches above the water. That water is flat, and the laser source proves that it is not being obscured behind the curvature. The liars have tried to confuse the issue by claiming that the laser wasn't level, but that's entirely irrelevant, since if the laser was angled downward, it would have hit the ledge curvature quicker. If the laser was pointed upward, then the observers would still not have seen the source, because the source of the laser would still have been hidden behind the alleged curvature. This footage would be impossible if we were living on a globe.
It's hard to even begin, actually, to talk about what a flat Earth would be like, because it's just so impossible. All our physics is constructed now. The physics of orbits, actually things going around the Earth, is all constructed with three-dimensional spherical world.
Looking at this ntrs.nasa.gov document here, dated April 17th, 1961. Go back to Acrobat. Looking at this document from 1961. And it says, a trajectory simulation incorporating the above requirements is represented in Figure 8. In addition to the above requirements, this simulation assumes a vehicle with 6 degrees of freedom and aerodynamic symmetry in roll, and the missile position in space is computed relative to a flat, non-rotating Earth. So they're checking out missile position in space computed relative to a flat, non-rotating Earth. Why would you do that? If the Earth is a rotating ball, 25,000 miles in circumference, why would you do your computations based on a non-rotating flat Earth?
FE Corps is an independent scientific foundation. You can read about FE Corps' powerful laser test here. The laser test was over a distance of 25 miles. All atmospheric conditions and temperatures were taken, and there's nothing there that accounts for the fact that they were able to see the laser 25 miles away. 297 feet should have been hidden below the horizon. That's the height of a skyscraper. And FE Corps filmed the laser at just 5 feet above the water.
1987 NASA technical paper, 2768, User's Manual for Linear, a Fortran program to derive linear aircraft models. That Acrobat here, same document. And we'll scroll down to, I believe it was page 12 again. Program overview. Within the program, the nonlinear equations of motion include 12 states representing a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. More diagrams, more equations. Nonlinear equations of motion used in the linearization program are general 6 degree of freedom equations representing the flight dynamics of a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth.
And it seems as if stuff isn't really dropping down at a curve, out of our view of distance either. Because to me it seems like we can only see a few miles out, and then things start to get hazy, unless you go higher. Because when you go higher in altitude, that's when your circle of view increases, and you can see further out. Except based on the Earth's curvature using this math, the land should start dropping from wherever you're standing on a ball Earth. Even if you're looking 40 miles out, there should be at least a 1,000-foot decline due to the curvature, even if it's a small gradual decline for only a mile. No matter what, the math says that the Earth must curve downward, and that means that things farthest out should be dropping or slanting off toward the distance, but videos like these, and so many more out there, contradict what I'm told is supposed to happen on a ball Earth when I'm observing the distance and objects at the edge of my circle of view. Again, the horizon always rises to the eye level of the observer based on how high or low you are. But as you go further up in the air, you can always see further out into the distance.
Flight testing a VTOL aircraft to identify a full envelope aerodynamic model. June 27, 1988. Day after my birthday. Page 4 of their document. For aircraft problems, the state of measurement models together represent the kinematics of a rigid body for describing motion over a flat, non-rotating Earth. NASA.gov, December 1991. Aircraft model for the AIAA Controls Design Challenge. On page 11. Once again, you have the equations of motion and atmospheric model. The nonlinear equations of motion used in this model are general 6 degree of freedom equations representing the flight dynamics of a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. You guys starting to see a pattern here?
Out of all of the tests that I've seen, this is probably my favorite so far. A group of researchers went to the Salton Sea in California and tested the curvature with both a laser and a sunset mirror flash. These tests were huge because the test was at a distance of 18 miles and you can see it all on video with multiple witnesses. Again, that's 18 miles shore to shore. As you can see here, they were able to see and film the reflection of the mirror that was 18 miles away from the camera. 155 feet should have been hidden, 155 feet. In addition to the sun reflection test, they also conducted a laser test. Here is the laser from 18 miles. You can even see the reflection of the laser on the flat water. Do you think it's possible that the source of the laser and its reflection both selectively hopped over the curvature to present a false flat Earth?
Is Earth way larger than they're telling us? Or is it just not round? Those are the only two options. But the evidence that you don't see and will never see on TV is mind-blowing evidence that shows you things that should not only be hidden by a few miles of curve, but should be hidden by over 100 miles of curve. At 30,000 feet, when you get above the atmosphere, you can see a lot further. And this guy here, Jay Tolan Media One, at his channel, this guy deserves some recognition. He has done something that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is curve missing over a distance of 1,200 miles. This is insane, and if I hadn't seen it, I probably wouldn't believe it.
Beyond Horizons isn't a Flat Earth website, but it is a repository of record-breaking long-distance photographs on the surface of the Earth. There are dozens of globe-defined photographs on this website. Here's the record photograph of Peak Gaspard at a distance of 275 miles or 443 kilometers. With an observation height of 9,272 feet, the very top of Peak Gaspard at 12,730 feet should have been hidden 3,772 feet below the horizon. I literally could point to hundreds of these globe-defined photographs and videos. Based on the evidence, I think that any reasonable person watching this would understand that we see too far.
This isn't new science. This isn't something we're making up. We are taking real science and applying it to what we can prove. Not to computer animations, not to theories, but things that we can actually prove. Do we have a complete working model? I don't know of many that do. Of any model, flat, round, heliocentric, stationary. We don't have it all figured out yet.
So what do flat earthers believe? Well, I'll caveat with we do not have it all figured out, nor do we claim to. However, we can prove that there are major issues with the globe model, and that is why we are searching for other solutions and other models which can support the phenomena and science we repeatedly observe. Well, this is the best representation I have so far. We believe the center of our motionless world is the North Pole, and an explorer or traveler can still circumnavigate this world from east to west or west to east by performing clockwise or counterclockwise circles around the North Pole. Antarctica is not a continent at the bottom of the globe, but rather a continental ice shelf and mountain range that acts as a shoreline that holds the waters in and potentially supports the dome above, so no falling off the edge. The sun, moon, and stars are simply lights in the sky. They are smaller, closer, located inside the Earth's system. They are not objects floating through space that are similar to the Earth. They are part of the Earth, so no comparing us to them.
And you guys, come on. Everybody watches newscasts. You all use mobile phones. You all see airplanes fly around. You all go to see Ed Sheeran in concert one day in London, another day in Melbourne, Australia. This all depends on our fundamental understanding of the size of the Earth and its shape with extraordinary precision.
And speaking of airplanes flying great distances, do planes constantly have to steer downward toward the Earth? Remember, they're covering a lot of distance and a lot of curvature in a very short amount of time.
If a pilot is flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down every 5 minutes. He should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one.
I was an airline pilot for Delta for 26 years. A pilot's primary flight instrument is his artificial horizon, which he has to be maintained level to keep from climbing and descending. From a cockpit, weather permitting, I could see hundreds of miles in all directions, viewing cities connected by roads across the flat plain as far as the eye could see.
That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one. But I went to the manufacturer of the artificial horizon, and they confirmed to me that it's completely mechanical, nothing electronic in it whatsoever. So it's literally just a gyroscope that can freely move. That right there is proof to me that planes fly over a plane.
This is all susceptible to analysis, but spend some time learning about navigation. Tell your friends to spend some time learning about navigation. Navigation's changed the world, by the way. What are you wearing? You're wearing stuff that came from another part of the world on a ship. It didn't get here by magic. It got here through science.
When you go onto the plane tracking software, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of flights over the northern hemisphere, and you can track those flights from beginning to end. When you look at any flight in the southern hemisphere, what you'll find is the flight takes off and disappears off the tracking.
Caught on camera, amazing moment. A woman gives birth to a premature baby girl at 30,000 feet on an airplane flight from Taiwan to Los Angeles. What does this have to do with the flat Earth? Well, here it is, folks. Check this out. I'm gonna read the actual page here from dailymail.co.uk, dated October 13, 2015. This is the published time or date. China airline flight landed in Alaska with an extra passenger, the newborn baby, after expecting the mother to give birth to a baby girl several weeks a little bit early. The Taiwan to Los Angeles flight was forced to make an emergency landing on Thursday after a Taiwanese passenger water broke 6 hours into the 19-hour journey. Okay, so listen up. We have Taiwan and we have Los Angeles. It's a pretty straight flight right across the Pacific Ocean. Agree? Agreed. Alaska is way up north on top of Canada. Okay? Why is it that the emergency stop went to Alaska. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. If you look at the map of the globe as a sphere, this is what it looks like. If we look at the flat Earth model, okay, we have Taiwan, we have Alaska in the middle, and LA at the end. So Taiwan over here, Alaska's in the middle, LA, Los Angeles on the left. This is the flight pattern, and the reason why they stopped in Alaska, it's because it's on the way there. 6 hours into a 19-hour flight, they decided to make an emergency stop in Alaska instead of going to LA. Why? Because LA is way farther than Alaska. All right? It doesn't get any more evident than this.
Then there are some other proofs that are a little more obscure, but they're actually really lovely. And one is to observe what happens during a lunar eclipse. Now, a lunar eclipse happens when the Earth casts a shadow on the moon. The moon actually goes dark. In fact, if you've seen one, you can actually see the Earth's shadow go across the moon. And when the moon is entirely in the Earth's shadow, the moon looks kind of dark and even kind of red colored. It's really, really beautiful. What's happening in that case is that the sun is on one side of the Earth. The Earth is in the middle, and it's casting a shadow. The Earth is casting a shadow on the moon. And as the shadow moves across the moon, you'll notice that the shadow is curved, it's round. So something like the sun that's bigger than the Earth and is able to cast a shadow of the Earth on the moon can actually show you the shape of the Earth.
The lunar eclipse is very often raised as the key proof of the globe, but it actually doesn't help the heliocentric cause at all. First, there's the well-documented Selenelian. This is video of one that happened on January 20th, 2019. There's the lunar eclipse above the horizon, and there's the sun above the horizon. A Selenelian is where a lunar eclipse occurs when both the sun and the moon are both above the horizon, which means there is no alleged Earth between the sun and the moon that could cause a shadow on the moon. That's geometrically impossible, and the official explanation of refraction is ludicrous as it causes a cascade of problems with other actual observations. Next, the shape of the eclipse is wrong. A shadow of a sphere on a sphere does not make a curve like this. You just have to think about it. A curve on a curve is distorted. Third, the color a lunar eclipse produces is reddish. Can you produce a red shadow here on Earth? No, it's impossible, and again, the official explanation regarding sunsets and sunrises on Earth appearing on the moon is shockingly ridiculous. Finally, very often the lunar eclipse comes from the wrong direction, like in this video. Under the official model, the shadow should always come from the bottom and rise up. Instead, you'll often have lunar eclipse shadows come from top to bottom, again belying the globe model. The solar eclipse is a strong proof of the flat Earth. First, notice that the sun and the moon are the same size. That's a statistical impossibility under the globe model. Now look at the size of the shadow. The moon is supposed to have a diameter of 2,159 miles. Then why is the shadow of the moon only 70 miles across during a solar eclipse? These are all proofs that the sun and the moon are much more local than claimed.
But you have to really look at what they're saying and ask yourself if it's true. And the predictions that this flat Earth model has does not match what we see in the sky. It's just that simple.
We're told that the sun is a massive ball of burning gas 93 million miles away. But if that were true, then all the light that arrives here would be parallel because it's so far away. And it has to be parallel because one of the most often cited supposed globe proofs is Eratosthenes' experiment between Alexandria and Syene, by which he calculated the size of the Earth.
So now if the Earth is round, how big is Earth? You might want to check for that. There was a famous experiment conducted by Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes. Turns out we can't see the bottom of both wells at the same time. What might explain this? Well, there are two possible explanations. First, we could have a flat Earth with the sun that's small and close by, so that the light hits the second well at an angle. Or second, we could have a curved Earth with a sun that's big and far away, so that all the light comes in parallel, but only one well at a time is lit all the way to the bottom. Turns out with just two wells, there's enough wiggle room for both explanations to fit our observations. Eratosthenes only had 2 wells. But what if he had added a third? With a third well, it doesn't matter where the sun is. No flat Earth model can explain the angles of all 3 shadows. But the spherical model explains it all 3 angles, with ease.
For that calculation to be accurate, the light must come down parallel. The only problem is that that's not what we see. If you go out on a sunny day with broken cloud, what you'll see is that light comes down at angles, diverging angles. And that means that we can follow those light rays back to the source and triangulate the sun's height above the Earth, proving that the sun isn't millions of miles away.
So let's keep reviewing the sun's relationship with clouds. And this one may be hard for you to process as well. Because what does this look like to you? Liz Dexick recorded this video, and you have no idea how many times I've looked at videos like this and tried to make sense of it. Because it's video like this that got me to get out there and personally record this kind of stuff and witness it myself. Because it appears the clouds are behind the sun. Your mind right now may be trying to tell yourself things about this video. You may be trying to explain this away in this very moment. Like the clouds are too thin, or the clouds simply aren't coming through on the camera due to the sun being too bright. But just look at this and pretend what I'm saying was possible for just a moment. What does this actually look like to you? Does it look like the clouds are behind the sun? And if you're not sure, let's take another look. Let's see what happens when we add a negative filter and other filters. Do you see the cloud layers? Do you see the depth of the clouds and how the camera processed the sun as in between the clouds, with some in front and some behind in the back? And there are so many videos out there showing this phenomenon. So many people have recorded this from all over the earth. There's more evidence out there if you want to find it.
But we can also perform physical experiments that prove that these crepuscular rays, as they're called, can only be recreated with a light source that is small and close.
It doesn't take a genius to understand that the further the light source goes up, the more the sun rays would spread out and become parallel. The reason you'd even think that the sun...
If the Earth was flat, wouldn't it be sunny all the time? I mean, have they ever even thought about it?
Well, if you'd let me finish, the reason you'd even think the sun would be visible from anywhere on Earth is because of the images they have shown you.
For starters, if that disk is flat, the sun is illuminating it everywhere on the disk. So even if it's all the way on the far side of the disk, you still see the sun. So the sun would never set.
To put that in perspective, imagine a table 2 meters wide in a completely dark room. And you're holding a small but very bright light bulb, 3.4 millimeters across. And you are holding it about 31 centimeters above the table. What you'd see is a circular pool of light directly on the table, beneath the light bulb. But on the other side of the table, it would be in darkness. Now, it seems to our mind that if you were on the other side of the table, you would see the light because it's, above the table. But that's not true, because on that part of the table, it's in darkness, meaning that the light isn't physically reaching that part of the tabletop.
We see the sun drop below the horizon. We don't just watch the sun get smaller, smaller, smaller. In fact, quite the opposite. At sunset, gets, again, because of the atmosphere, kind of smushed out. And when it disappears, it gets dark.
We're also told that the sun sets because as the Earth rotates us away from the sun, it's actually obscured by the physical curvature of the Earth. That's not what we see.
What we see is a local sun that is taking its local light with it. What happened to the horizon glowing across half of the world? Most sunsets are already fading through pollution, dander, chemtrails, and fog. Plus, refraction will always make the sun seem like it's going down, as well as your perspective.
It would appear to sink down in your field of view. That's perspective. The further away you get from it, the lower it will appear. It doesn't physically change its height, it just appears that way to your eyes, until eventually it will disappear behind the horizon formed by your eye's vanishing point. Your eye has an angular resolution of 0.2 degrees, and anything at that height will disappear beyond the limit of your sight. Many times we can see time-lapse footage of the sun that shows it getting smaller as it moves away from us. Now, that's not always the case, since the sun is travelling around the North Pole. The closer you are to the north, the less you'll see the size change. But from locations beyond the equator, you'll absolutely see the sun's size change. And that could never ever happen if the sun was 93 million miles away. You wouldn't see the sun change at all.
Our eyes cannot see farther than what they were designed to see, but that is no reason to keep them closed.
There's also an effect that occurs under certain conditions called atmospheric lensing, where the sheer amount of atmosphere, as well as the rain between you and the sun, acts like a lens and a prism, magnifying it greatly, which leads to another observational proof that the sun setting is an optical effect. At such times, when the sun is setting over the sea, and it seems as though it's half hidden by the horizon, then you can zoom in with a high-powered zoom camera and see that it's actually still above the horizon.
So what about the moon? We all witness the moon only illuminating the local clouds around it. That is because it is also a local light, but one with opposite effects from the sun. As we can all agree, shade from the sun is cooler than direct sunlight. But did you know the moon's shade is actually warmer than direct moonlight? The moon produces cold light, something the science priests must have forgotten to teach us all about in school. Not only that, but at times we can see stars through the moon, proving it is not some solid rock 238,900 miles away.
So as of now, I certainly do not think that the sun or the moon are round balls floating in space. And that's why I don't believe the moon is a physical object that we can actually reach by aircraft either.
And just so you know, the globe side has complex answers to all these, but it's time you start evaluating evidence for yourself instead of simply accepting someone else's opinion of it. We all have the same evidence. It's your worldview and your perception of the source that determines your interpretation of that evidence. The experts are not any closer to the stars than you are. You have the ability to trust your senses and come up with conclusions for yourself.
I was watching a documentary recently about flat earthers that was fascinating. I don't know if anybody saw this. There are people who believe the earth is flat.
My own pet theory is that they're just doing it for comic effect, just to see how far they can push it. Imagine for a moment that, the earth was flat. Well, how much thickness does it then have? These are the kind of questions you'd have to ask. Okay, you've got an edge. Well, would things fall off the edge?
One thing I'm annoyed at is people that go, the flat earth theory, that's so stupid. A disk out in space? This is not what I think the earth is. If you're going to have a video and represent flat earthers as thinking that we think this, I do not think the earth is out in outer space. I think space has been a deception. Before you get mad, I believe earth is creation. There's only one sun in creation, as God says in the Bible. There's only one moon, as God said in the Bible. And there's the stars and firmament. These things move and rotate in a way, they're on their circuits. The earth does not move. Therefore, it is not a spinning ball or a flat thing out in outer space. There's a firmament glass-like dome that separates the waters above and the waters below. Hell, Sheol, is literally underneath us. Heaven is literally above us with God and Jesus on the throne. The earth is creation. There's no universe of creation with other planets. The planets are the wandering stars with the fixed stars. The moon and the sun, two lights that God made, no one's landing on them. There's no land to land on. They are lights in the sky. They are great and part of God's creation, but no one's landing on them. It's just, again, this is lazy. This is dumb. This is like you're not investigating before you speak kind of thing. Before I knew the earth was flat, I thought it was stupid. It was embarrassing to look into things about that. But you need to get over that fear and trust God and what he says, and not what the world says when they say they live on a globe, or not what other people say when they think a flat disk in outer space. No outer space.
I mean, if it was flat, the water would run off it and horses would fall off it because animals are stupid. But they have an answer for that. The flat earthers have an answer. They say the reason the water stays on and nothing falls off is because we are surrounded by a snow-covered mountain range. And I was like, oh, all right. I was worried you were going to sound stupid.
When I look at the people who signed the Antarctic Treaty, and all the nations that were down there doing whatever they were doing signed a treaty, and I believe it was 1958 or somewhere thereabouts, saying, nope, nobody can stake a claim to Antarctica, and if you're going to go down there, you can only go down there for scientific reasons under carefully restricted guidance, but it's not a free-for-all. Nobody can just, hey, I'm going to go check out Antarctica and do a high jump of my own. Nope, can't do it.
It's the only treaty that's all these countries have signed and never broken and completely agreed on. It's the only one. What treaty is there that everybody's agreed on? We're being kept away from it for a reason. They have some scientific bases there, and literally it's controlled by the military because they don't want you finding out what's beyond.
During 3 voyages lasting 3 years and 8 days, Captain Cook and crew sailed a total of 60,000 miles along the Antarctic coastline, never once finding an inlet or path through or beyond the massive glacial wall. So the other question is, well, how come ships don't go off the sea if it's flat? How come ships don't fall off the edge? Well, here's why you don't fall off the edge. There's a 200 to 300 foot high wall that is the border that Scripture says is keeping everything in. Nothing's going past that.
Because they don't want you finding out what's beyond.
People really believe this. And not only do they believe it, they're adamant and they tell people, they're like, you've been lied to your whole life. They're lying about the shape of the earth. And all I keep thinking is, why would anybody lie about the shape of the earth? Who wins?
All right, now let's move into another big question. The why. Because if this is true, why would people hide this? Why would they lie? This one's a lot easier for me to try and answer. Because think about it. If Earth was a spinning ball, then that means that it all started with the Big Bang, which simply put is a scientific theory stating that the universe began with a singularity, and then space-time expanded. And then from that Big Bang moment, everything evolved, transformed, and changed over billions of years, eventually leading to life, which began with single-cell organisms. And those single-cell organisms evolved, transformed, and changed, and they eventually became sophisticated life forms like you and me. It just took billions of years for humans to become the one-of-a-kind specimens that we are today. And if the Big Bang and evolution are true, that means the universe is constantly expanding. And if the universe is constantly expanding, that would mean there's infinite space out there to explore and visit. And that would definitely mean that our little rock known as Earth would be rotating around our local star known as the Sun. And that would mean similar solar systems to ours could happen in other parts of the universe. And that means there could be other evolved, intelligent life forms out there just like you and me. And that means Earth would basically be a grain of sand in a universe growing larger by the nanosecond. And that means Earth is not the heart of anything. That means our entire existence is pretty much an evolutionary accident. And that means life here on Earth, it has no real meaning or purpose.
So mainstream science tells us that the Earth formed 4.6 billion years ago, after a Big Bang that created the known universe. This wild theory is widely accepted as fact, and it's mechanically repeated by most people due to the fact that it's what public schools teach to the kids without challenge. There is absolutely no possible way to determine whether or not an event took place that long ago. It's actually very strange that anyone would believe this nonsense. Mainstream science also tells us that life on Earth evolved into monkeys, which eventually evolved into us. There's only one huge gaping problem with the theory of evolution. We are not only missing one link between monkeys and humans, but we are missing hundreds, if not thousands, of evolutionary links. Maybe more. They want us to believe that one day we fell out of a monkey's ass and we landed on a spinning ball that's advancing through outer space at ridiculous speeds. We are being deceived.
Everywhere I look, I see mankind giving explanations about how Earth works and how the solar system works, along with how everything works that actually came into existence around us. And those theories are basically presented as facts. And we all know that mankind is the one teaching science. And we all know that mankind is capable of being deceitful, selfish, and straight up evil. And that means the truth about Earth could have been intentionally concealed to hide the existence of a creator.
The globe is made up to indoctrinate our brains, to brainwash us with lies that take God out of the picture. The globe means the Big Bang and evolution and a bunch of satanic science with 6s and 666s implanted in it.
According to science and the satanic system, the Earth is supposedly tilted at a 23.4 degree angle off vertical. And that leaves you at 66.6 degrees off horizontal. Now what are the chances of that? You think this is just a coincidence? Take a look at this. Earth is supposedly orbiting around the sun and moving at 66,600 miles an hour.
Look at the Antarctic and Arctic circles. Oh, would you like that? 66.6 degrees north and 66.6 degrees south. Now let's go over the diameter of the moon. This is a new one, I actually didn't know. It's 2,160 miles, but you take 6 times 6 times 6, there you go, 2160. The surface temperature of Uranus, oh, there you go, negative 216, which is 6 times 6 times 6, 216. Oh, you thought we were done. Let's do Pluto's orbital velocity. Scroll down here. Oh, there we go. 666. The speed of sound in knots. Speed of sound? Oh, well, look at that. 666 knots. The Earth's circumference in nautical miles? Oh, 21,600. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Again, 600 times 6 times 6. Another coincidence, 21,600. How far is Mars from the sun? 1.666 astronomical units. Now let's look at Ceres' synodic period. And just as you expected, 666. Again, the devil's in the details, ladies and gentlemen. Saturn's orbital distance in kilometers. Let's take a look at the numbers. Oh, 1,426,666,000.
And I gotta say that there seems to be a deep rabbit hole of lies, because we are being taught some twisted things here. And we end up seeking these twisted teachings despite what our spirit, our minds, our hearts, and our souls tell us to seek and believe. Because we've been taught to serve our physical bodies and satisfy them. We've been taught to possess and achieve all of these things to feel and become whole. But if the earth was flat, then that means that the earth could be a firm and immovable plane. And that means there would be no Big Bang, no outer space, no expanding universe. And that means there would be nothing out there to visit and explore. And that means Earth could be the center of everything. And that means Earth could be an enclosed environment. And that means our entire existence inside this place is not an accident. That means life here on Earth is special. And that would mean that you and I are significant. And that would lead to many more questions. Like, who created this place? Who put us here? Why were we put here? What is the meaning of all of this? And I believe that all of these answers can be found in the scriptures. Except the word, which is supposed to be our guidebook, it has become the opposite of almost everything we're witnessing in this place right now. Because right now, science gets held up on a pedestal. Its theories are preached as facts, leading to science being worshipped like it's a god of revelations.
Look, you're wasting our time. You're not going to get us to not believe in evolution.
And why is that?
Because the smartest scientists in the entire world all agree that it's real.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I read a book once, and it told me that Earth was just dry land. But then I started my education, and those words began to fade away as I found out that we are on a ball that is flying through space, millions of miles away from the sun. And before I could even read, I knew the order of the planets and could sing along with the rest of the class. And never did any of us dare question the geniuses that were before us who figured it all out, no matter how far off they were with their estimates, whether or not they thought the Earth was stationary. We never looked into that. We never thought to question it. We were told that these people were smart. We saw the pictures of them with their cool style, with the fluff under their necks, the compass in their hands. Never did we ever question their methods or find out how smart they really were. There were no IQ tests back then that we were aware of, but the science is continuing to change. Our atmosphere has gone from a couple hundred miles away to 400,000 miles. The planets aren't even in the same order that was ingrained into our brains at such a young age. NASA is telling us now that there is a man-made barrier surrounding Earth. And of course, this news came shortly after scientists detected an impenetrable barrier where deep space should be.
Mr. Reynolds, these were all the smartest scientists. Only problem is, they kept being wrong!
This is insane, you fool!
I'm a fool because I have more faith in the saints that wrote the Bible?
Yeah, because you just read the words of a bunch of guys that you never met, and you just take it on faith that everything they wrote was true.
And what makes you think what your scientists are writing is any more truer than my saints?
Because there are volumes of proven data, numbers, figures.
Have you poured through the data yourself? The numbers, the figures?
Well, no. No.
Oh, interesting. So let me get this straight, Mr. Reynolds. You get your information from a book written by men you've never met, and you take their words as truth based on a willingness to believe, a desire to accept, a leap of, dare I say it, faith?
Come on. Look, I mean, I don't even know how I'm supposed to respond to that. Like, come on.
I rest my case.
It is profound to wake up out of Satan's matrix. The globe is such a huge part of it. Sometimes I wonder, people are like, well, this is a lie I can understand, but the globe? No, they can't lie about that. Satan is the best liar of all time. He's the father of lies. He has deceived us. How much? So the average person thinks they live on that, but they really, really don't. That's what the globe is. It's an idea. It's a concept. It's a little image made to take people away from the creation that God made.
So I believe we're living during extremely interesting times. And in these times, I believe strange truths can be researched, discovered, and revealed like never before. So that's why I believe that this video may be the most important thing that I've ever done. Because if these strange truths are right, then this stuff could wake up people and help them move mountains of deception. These strange truths could reveal that we were created and that our Creator put us here for a reason. Imagine if everyone learned that knowledge. Imagine if everyone knew that when they died, they'd have to literally meet their Maker. Do you think that people would make different life choices with that knowledge? Do you think that people would treat themselves, others, and everything on earth better? The truth is that any day could be our last day due to any unexpected event or accident. Yes, that sounds cliche, but it's truth. And that's why I believe we must embrace our common salvation. And I believe our Creator is begging all of us to look to Him. He wants to say that he knew us before meeting face to face at the time of our death. So straight up, I really want to help serve him, because I believe every strange truth that I've shared here can serve as a gateway for people to come to the truth about a creator. And I believe that path leads to the truth about Jesus, our Savior, our Creator, the God of the Bible, sent himself into human form as Jesus, the Christ. He is salvation. Because the gospel, which can be found in the beginning verses of Corinthians chapter 15, Paul wrote that he died by crucifixion to deliver us from our sins, and he was buried, and he rose again on the third day, and he was seen again by hundreds of eyewitnesses according to the scriptures. And I really do believe that this gospel must be truly believed and accepted to bind our soul with our Creator beyond this life. Will we seek the truth? Will we look to our Creator? Will we choose Him over ourselves or even each other?
Waking up out of the brainwashing helped me to have a much better walk and relationship with Jesus Christ. We will all know the truth someday. God bless you, everyone.
So what do you do next if you're open to this being the truth? Maybe you'll watch this video again to determine what you want to research first. Maybe you'll observe the celestial bodies. Maybe you'll test for curvature across the earth. Maybe you'll record and look for clouds behind the sun. Maybe you'll open a Bible and read it for the first time, or maybe the first time in a long time. Maybe you'll call upon the name of Jesus to be saved right now. And then maybe you'll ask Him to lead you to the next step. No matter what, I challenge you to observe your surroundings. Look up, look around, challenge what you've been taught. Research what doesn't make sense, because I think you'll be surprised at what you find. And maybe you'll be open to sharing the strange truth. Maybe you'll sit down with your significant other and show them this video. Or maybe you'll send this video to another friend to get their opinion so that you can talk about it with someone you trust. But whether or not you end up believing, accepting, or sharing this video, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you because you watched this entire video, and I sincerely appreciate you doing that. I am so grateful for you just being open to watching this. So thank you for honoring my request, and straight up, thank you for being special. Thank you for being significant. Okay, so I don't really know the best way to end this thing, because this Strange Truth project, it has consumed so much of my life for the past year. And it's still kind of crazy when I stop and think about all of this, because it's still hard for me to process at times, and I actually believe all of this. So that obviously means that I also believe I'll have to meet my Creator someday. And that means that I'll have to answer Him if He asks me, did you help share the truth? I pray that I've done my due diligence. I pray that I am doing what's right. Yeah, I pray.